Jay Muget. These are my 5 adult audience members. Please disregard my son Noah. He's just sitting in. Today's date is September the 21st, 2014. Communications 110. Chanel Harris. Jordan will now film this segment. Here are the cue cards that I will be using for this speech. Just in case. Thank you everyone for coming. Public school uniforms are not mandatory. However, the trend is increasingly growing throughout many schools in the U.S. First, we will take a look at how it all began and where it started. According to an online article for the National Center for Education of Statistics, in the school years of 2003 and 2004, and between 2011 and 2012, public schools requiring students to wear uniforms increased from 13 to 19%. We'll take a look at how it began, where it began, and why the school system felt it was necessary. Almost every public school is conforming to uniforms. Let's face it, in the past, we only saw students wearing school uniforms in private and parochial schools. However, this is no longer the case. And it all started in 1987, right here in Baltimore, Maryland, at an elementary school called Cherry Hill. They were the first to introduce school uniforms in a public school. Schools became a recruiting ground for gang members at one time. School grounds was at an all-time high for crime. Students was being jumped and robbed for their designer tennis shoes, designer jackets, and even their designer book bags. Wild of GreatSchools.org wrote that even Bill Clinton, in his State of the Union speech, said, if the children will stop killing one another over designer shoes and jackets, then public schools should be allowed to enforce uniforms. Administrators feel that when school uniforms are in place, test scores go up, gang behavior is down, and attendance is increased. Sweeney of the Boston Globe says it boosts school pride. It relieves peer pressure. Students don't have to worry about being mocked or teased because everyone look alike. Everyone has on the same thing. And it helps students stay focused on their academics rather than what they're wearing to school. So now that you know how it started, why it started, and where it began, we will discuss the pros and the cons of wearing school uniforms. And this is according to teachers, students, as well as parents. There are rewards and benefits to wearing school uniforms, Noah. Wearing school uniforms require you to look formal. Your school have a sense of pride. It shows a individuality because you get to wear different types of shoes, but it shows a formality with all of the students across. Schools that requires uniforms are quickly able to identify any unauthorized visitors. They can quickly assess and determine when someone is out of place or should not be in that school. It deters mocking. It deters the wearing of gang colors. And school uniform decreases peer pressure of keeping up with the Joneses. So, not everyone is in favor of school uniforms. We've discussed the pros according to teachers and students and parents. Now let's discuss the cons. Parents feel that enforcing school uniforms places sometimes an unwarranted financial burden on them, especially if they have multiple children that are in schools that require uniforms. Students, on the other hand, feel that they are not allowed to express their individuality. they cannot express themselves artistically. But that is not the case. 23% of all public and private schools in the U.S. now requires students to wear uniforms, with public school making up the majority of 19%. So, in conclusion, we've discussed how it began, where it began, how it began, where it began, and why it began. When school uniforms are in place, you can have a sense of belonging. It's favorable to all parties, and it will not disrupt a student's rights for free expression if it is appropriately applied. In actuality, it will help a student have a sense of business sense, help them get ready for the real world, as we say. It teaches them to dress professional. No matter how much we enforce school uniforms, parents and teachers will have to work together to enforce and instill rules in students that what is acceptable and not acceptable in a public school. No enforcement of uniforms will prevent this. However, schools have stated that are in this mandatory school public of wearing uniforms that test scores are up, school violence is down, and it brings more sensibility within the school system. A lot may not agree, but my personal feelings as a parent of a child that's in public school, feel that if public schools are going to enforce school uniforms, it should be mandatory statewide. Because where I am, it only allows you to wear uniforms in certain area codes or certain zip codes. If school uniforms are going to be enforced, speaking from a parent's point of view, it needs to be enforced all the way across. So no child will feel better or less than the other. Thank you all for your time.